Welcome back. Universal Studios just dropped the first Christopher Nolan proper trailer for the Odyssey. I think one got leaked not too long ago, but this is the first proper trailer for the upcoming film, which comes out in July. So I thought we would give it a watch and see if it's any good. So without further ado, let's give it a go.
Tell me what you remember.
Well, life?
Straight off the bat, I think I'm a little bit concerned, is maybe the best word, over the casting of Matt Damon as Odysseus.
Matt Damon!
I don't know why, but when I look at him, I don't see him as Odysseus. Maybe it's an unfair criticism, but he just doesn't seem to hold the weight of such a prestigious character. But maybe he's going to prove me wrong. I don't know. We will find out when the film gets released. But he just doesn't, I'm not saying that he's not an actor with presence or anything, but I just don't get the sense that he's the kind of actor that's going to really nail Odysseus. But let's move on.
A son.
And then what?
We won the war.
The Odyssey is an extremely epic tale. For anyone that doesn't really know, I'm not going to claim to be a scholar of the classics at all. Don't get me wrong, and I'll butcher describing what the Odyssey is, so I'm not going to bother. All I will say is that it's an epic tale that's told at length, and it's one of those that it needs to be done slowly, methodically, and with patience, because there's an awful lot of detail in there. It basically is the tale of Odysseus returning home from the Trojan War, the fall of Troy, which I think is being depicted there. Certainly looks like it is. And it looks pretty cool. Like, it looks pretty epic, that little sequence there, especially with the tower falling in the background. That kind of tells you everything you need to know. The fall of Troy collapsing there. And then obviously the return journey is 10 years long. And it's told over a series of epic verses, as is my understanding. And I think some of them, I did a podcast recently with Dr. Paul Taylor, and he was talking about how this, if you were to read them, just read the verses to yourself, it would take potentially up to 45 minutes to read one of the verses. Now, obviously, Nolan is a filmmaker that's known for making very long films, Oppenheimer, for instance. So I don't think he's necessarily afraid of that. And I think if anyone could potentially do it, it probably would be Nolan. But my worry is I'm not sure how it's going to fit into a film format. I think this would be better suited to a sort of episodic series. And I think you could do it justice on the series level. That's kind of what I think HBO's Harry Potter has going for it, is the fact that you can, expand on chapters. You can really sort of tell a chapter over a series of episodes if you really wanted to. But you can coax out those characters. You can coax out the dialogue to tell those scenes and those plot points in a really detailed and good way that are justified to the source material. This needs to be a slow, methodical retelling, and I'm not sure it suits the film format. I think it would be better as a series, but anyway.
Help me go home.
This is a household waiting for master. I want you to choose me.
Ithaca's king is coming back.
No, he's not.
That's the Cyclops. So, it looks pretty cool. It kind of looks like what I remember from textbooks when I was a kid, learning about Greek mythology and stuff. It kind of looks how I remember it being represented. And this is going to be an epic tale. It really is. It's going to be a lot of mythological and legendary characters and creatures in there. There's a lot to cover. Like I say, I'm not sure it's going to fit into that film format, but we'll see.
What would he do if he came back here and find all these suitors in his house?
They're pining for a daddy.
Let me just...
Pining for a daddy you didn't even know. Like some sniveling bastard.
I've got to say that I think it's true for both of them. I would never have thought that Robert Pattison and Tom Holland would suit a film like The Odyssey. If you'd have said that, 5 years ago, I'd have been like, no, I don't think so. Watching them here, though, you do kind of get that sense that, especially Robert Pattison has come a long way in his career. From the Twilight days where it was like, he's just a good-looking young man.
Oh, young man!
That didn't really have much depth as an actor and didn't really have much to offer beyond the sort of baseline pretty boy style of delivery. But I mean, I really liked him in The King. I thought he was really good in that. And apparently he's really good in The Batman as well. So, I think he's come a long way, and I'm not upset to see him in this kind of film. And I would say the same thing about Tom Holland, who obviously plays Spider-Man. You would think that the pair of them would have kind of been typecast and they wouldn't really be applicable for roles like these in The Odyssey. But I'm looking at them now and I'm not turned off by them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not thinking they don't belong or they don't look like they fit in.
No, like some sniveling bastard.
Who's looking after your wife and son?
Do you see?
My dad is coming home.
Bringing vengeance.
Bringing it all.
I think, before we go any further, I think the big thing that I just want to highlight here is that you got to really give it to Nolan. Like, he is one of those filmmakers. He's an ambitious filmmaker and a talented filmmaker, and he doesn't use a lot of CGI. He doesn't use a lot of, obviously he does in things like Inception and whatnot. You have to. There's no way to do that thing with the whole buildings flipping over and whatnot. But what I mean is he's a big fan of practical effects, and you can see that. Like, I really like the use of what I can see throughout of physical effects, practical effects. And I think the costumes and stuff, they look kind of cool. I mean, I'm not a classic scholar. I don't know if this is how a Greek would have dressed. I'm not sure at what point of the story this is. Maybe their armor would have deteriorated by now if this is like years into the voyage and whatnot. It's obviously impossible to know at that stage. But he does seem to age through this. I was going to say Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Now that I've said that, that looked quite ropey. Yeah, that looks very ropey. I just praised him and then immediately, oh, that doesn't look very good. Not just them, they kind of weirdly stand out. But that's not too jarring because I think a big influencer on the practical effects on this film, from what I've read and from what we talked about in a podcast that I'm going to bring up in a minute. I think Jason the Argonauts is a sort of visual inspiration for this. And if that's the case, then you expect, jangly, jarring villains to be in this. But that sword swipe, that's not good. That doesn't look very good to me.
I need everyone at this party dead.
I can still save them.
You're a man who needs to control his fate. But you cannot control this.
That world is gone.
What is it with Hollywood at the minute and dogs? They just love puppies and everything. Supergirl and all that kind of stuff. What is it with Hollywood and puppies?
That world is gone.
No one could stand between me and home. Not even the gods. Keep us straight! I think it's asleep.
There we are. Shot entirely on IMAX film cameras. Like I say, you can't accuse Nolan of being unambitious, and you can't accuse him of not being a determined and courageous filmmaker in many regards. His commitment to IMAX, his commitment to sort of big screen experience is commendable, and it's something that we should support if you're, a film lover. And I fully intend to watch this in the cinema, but I think, if I remember correctly, from either the conversation we had or something I've read online, it's going to go to streaming quite quickly, which for me is a bit of a red flag because, like I mentioned in my Del Toro Frankenstein review, which is on the channel if you want to check it out, I think the real tragedy of that film, and I think the real tragedy of this film as well, will be that most people won't watch it in the cinema. They'll watch it on Netflix, etc. And so they'll be susceptible to the distractions of home life, your phone, your kids, etc. And my worry is that this will be a really intricately shot and detailed film, and hopefully with, tasteful use of CGI. But most of its audience won't watch it. They'll have it on, but they won't really watch it. And that's a plague that infests, cinema, full stop, filmmaking, full stop, and TV shows and everything. We are distracted behind our phones far too much to enjoy most of, if not all, contemporary media. And Nolan, some fair criticism of Nolan is that he does favor those intricate storylines, intricate plot twists, non-linear narratives, all that kind of stuff. He favors that over the sort of emotional payoff and the sort of emotional development of characters. It is very intellectually driven, which if you're a pretentious filmmaker or someone with filmmaking leanings like myself, you're going to enjoy. You're going to be like, oh, look at me, I get it. But if you're just a casual film enjoyer, like if you just watch films for the fun of it, you probably might appreciate the action scenes. And I'm not being snobby or anything. I'm just saying I think this kind of film, this kind of story really deserves, a lot of attention. It deserves a really passionate filmmaker that's really determined to tell an authentic retelling of the original source material. And I'm not saying that Christopher Nolan isn't that, because I think if anyone can do it in the modern era, any director could do the Odyssey justice, it probably would be Nolan. And Nolan alone, really. I'm not sure anyone could take on a project like this and nail it outside of the Nolan camp. But if you're a scholar, if you're someone that, reads the classics and understands, these stories in depth, and you have a real detailed understanding, I think you're probably going to struggle to enjoy this film. I think you're probably going to not see the point in it being made. And so, yeah, it's an ambitious film because it's such an important story to the founding of the Western civilization. It really is one of those. It's got a real high pedestal. And so it's going to be accused, I think, of being of dumbing it down and cheapening the story from the academic community. And I think it's going to be celebrated from the filmmaking community, but we'll probably be like, it's a bit long. It's a bit unemotional. It lacks a bit of an emotional payoff. And I think the casual viewer will be like, I got bored, because it's going to be a long film. It's going to be an intricate film. I hope it's a success. It doesn't look ugly. That little bit of CGI in there's a little bit ropey. But if it's anything like Jason and the Argonauts, I'm all in. If you're interested in my thoughts on Nolan's work, I've just done a podcast actually with Dr. Paul Taylor and Stuart Shaw from the Readers of the Lost Art channel on YouTube. We talked mainly about Memento and then briefly touched on sort of Nolan's other works, and then obviously the Odyssey as well, sort of looking forward to what we might expect. And I think we've got another couple of podcasts coming up on the subject as well throughout the next couple of months. I'll leave a link to the previous podcast in the description. Feel free to check it out, and give him a follow, and follow me for more as well. If you like that, please do feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.